Okay, we're further down the road. We're just kind of like into some regular, typical, Soviet brick houses, but still nice red ones. There's actually quite a few of them in the general region where I live, which is nice. But what I wanted to show was this over here. And this is actually one of the big, if you like do a search of like what to see in Okruzhnaya or like what to do in Okruzhnaya, they always say Botanichny Sad, the botanical garden over there. And that's all good and well, and that is something we will get to in due time, but it's across this massive highway right here. This is Altufyevskaya highway, and there's actually another metro station on the other side of it. So due to the arbitrary rules which I've set for myself, I'm gonna focus on exploring this little region over here. So I do realize that if you live in Okruzhnaya, or like at metro station Okruzhnaya, you probably do come over to the botanical gardens quite a bit. It's quite nice. Again, ridden my bike through there numerous times, but we're not going over there. First, like it's a trek to get across, but it is its own thing. It's actually one of those concepts I've been toying with. Like, for example, at some point in time, I'm going to draw metro station Vlodinha, right? The exhibition grounds that I've talked about and that I've been alluding to, not just in this video, but in that previous one I mentioned earlier. And I was thinking, like, I'm probably just gonna have to ignore those things. Like, if I wanna do a video on the botanical garden, I'm just gonna have to do a botanical garden video. And when the metro station, I believe, is Vladikina, when that metro station comes up, I'm just gonna have to ignore the botanical gardens and only focus on like the residential, commercial end of things, because otherwise I'm just gonna spend all time in the garden. But this is what I wanted to show, I think. And maybe not. Hold on, let's see. I'm curious as to, oh yeah, almost certainly. So, if this is what I think it is, then we'll find out. Looks like, okay, so we've got construction of a residential home within the framework of the realization of the renovation program for the Moscow city government, which means they tear down old buildings and put new cardboard boxes in their place. I'm sure the people who get to live in those are happy in some senses, but there's also plenty of dissatisfied individuals along the way too. But no, okay, the thing I was actually thinking of is up here still. As far as I'm, yeah, okay. So I will hold off on my cynicism for a second. You can see, just imagine though for a second, you saw the picture of what that house is going to look like, right? Like, just imagine a dumb, sort of prefab, cheap-looking modern house next to those old-style brick buildings. I mean, I understand it's Moscow, but this is one of my major complaints with the city is there's just like no thought given to how things are going to look next to each other. Also, I don't know if you can see it, but there is on that white pillar, and there's another one further down, a little balcony, which is quite cool. I mean, for people who live there right now, it probably sucks because that massive construction zone going on behind them. Okay, so we're along a highway, and you're like, what are we doing here? This is loud. Well, you can't smell it, but it's smelly. And it's also like not really interesting. This thing over here. We're gonna take a look at this. So, this was a cinema during the Soviet Union. Riga was the name of the Soviet Union, and I want to get my notes up in here real fast because I feel like otherwise I'm going to miss one little piece of information. And that is, no, okay, I'm good. So as you can see, this is pretty well boarded up. It's completely shuttered, and it actually worked into the 1990s, and it closed down sometime in the early 2000s. This is what happened to a lot of old Soviet cinemas. There's actually one in my neighborhood as well that is in better condition. They've done a better job of hiding the fact that it's an abandoned cinema, but it is still nevertheless a Manhattan cinema. Oh, okay, hold up too. Real quick, this is not related to the cinema, but this little bird figure here, Ada Aves, I don't know who this is, but I've seen this little tag near the university. I've seen this in all sorts of random places around the city, but yeah, right? It smells about like what you would expect it to. The reason I'm kind of highlighting this is if you go, and I'll put a shot up on the screen right now because there's not really too much of interest to see back this way other than another red brick building. 10 years ago, the mayor's office said that they were going to put this through the renovation program. And this is actually one of those things that when they first started renovating these old cinemas, it was kind of a cool idea. The work that they did was to turn them into cultural buildings. Now again, like, can we see what's going on up there? Looks like little red brick building and all of that, but I don't know. Anyway, with the old cinemas, they were going to turn them into cultural centers, which sounded cool in concept. And it was one of those things when they first announced it, it seemed like a really good idea for what to do with these old buildings, right? Renovate them, kind of fix up the inside and turn them into places where you could have after-school lessons for kids, or workshops for retired people, or maybe even just places where citizens who live in the community could come together, maybe for discussions or dance lessons or stuff like that, right? Because those programs do, to some degree, exist within this city, so why not use these old cinemas, which would have been fairly common throughout various neighborhoods that are no longer needed, and use them for a new cultural point? Well, the thing is, most of these old cinemas have not been converted into cultural centers per se. They've been converted into shopping malls. And in some of the regions, that is quite popular. And I'm sure that when this gets converted eventually into a shopping mall, it will also be a popular place. Although it's hard to say because, again, you have this massive highway right here. There are some houses that direction, but it's not super, super built up. I don't know. The reason I'm kind of sick of it is just like, if you see these, they all look like the exact same white plastic and glass boxes. They all look like these two-story white and white plastic siding with glass boxes. I'll put a picture up on the screen too so you can see what I'm talking about. And when you go inside of them, there's a shopping, or there's like a grocery store, a manicure place, a place to get your beard trimmed, and then a bunch of restaurants and a coffee shop type of stuff. It's just a small shopping mall. So instead, the gripe I have ultimately with this, and what's ultimately going to become of this building right here too, is not that I don't think they should get rid of that. Obviously, it is a problematic building. You can't just leave it here. Something's got to go in its place. But the original plan was for cultural centers, and that is still generally how it's being marketed to people, is that like, we're going to build cultural centers, but they're not cultural centers. They're just shopping malls. So somebody's making a quick buck, obviously, and what could be a public space is not. I mean, it is. I guess you can go to KFC with your family and chill, or Rustics, or whatever the hell you want to call it now. But I understand there's probably a good reason why the government does not want people forming large grassroots connections with each other outside of the house and outside of their circle of friends and family. I get why they probably are against it, but at that point in time, just get rid of the cultural center phrasing and say that you're going to just build a shopping mall here. So, yeah, we're getting more of these houses. I'll just show a picture too, because we're actually going to go up to one of these residential complexes here quite soon. And again, like, if you look at the picture, how these buildings look in real life is not how they look on the picture. Like, the way this picture makes it look, these are just absolutely dumpy little toy houses, right? 4 stories tall. 1, 2, 3, 4. That is not a 4-story building. If anything, it's closer to a 6-story building. There's like massive ceilings. The floors are all really, really big. I mean, granted, yeah, the graffiti on the side of the cinemas is pretty accurate, but yeah, this looks still pretty garbage on the render, but it looks a lot better based on how this looks in the background. This is sort of like dumpy buildings. I don't know. There's a whole larger issue with urban planning in this city on the whole, but that is probably its own separate video. A lot of people come to Moscow, they see all the new construction and everything like that, which is good. It's good. I don't have a problem with that per se. It's just feels like it should be done in a more in a manner which puts it more in line with what is already pre-existing, right? Like there would be a general urban plan for the city. So, okay. Now I did say I was gonna grab some street food, and this is the place I'm gonna get it. I'm gonna grab shawarma, and I'll go grab that, and then after I grab that, I'm gonna cross that road, so you'll see me on the other side over there. So this is probably going to be a little off balance just because ground isn't very level here. And I'm sitting on the ground, which is even worse than the last time I ate shawarma when I was sitting on the curbstone. But this little green space, which I am in, when I looked at the street view a few days ago, they had benches in the past, but those have evidently been taken away. I gotta make this thing just slightly ironed. So, anyway, I already bit into this thing on the way because it had a lot of sauce on top of it. But what I will say is that location has very mixed reviews, as do pretty much all of the shawarma places in Okruzhnaya. I think that's kind of the general takeaway with shawarma places in general, is that some people say it's like the worst thing they've ever had in their entire life, and they damn near, or they almost died from eating it, and other people say it's literally the best thing they've ever experienced. So I took a gamble, but I actually did something. The reason I specifically went there, not only was it kind of convenient on the route, but they have falafel, which is becoming more common in Moscow, but for a very, very long time, you couldn't really get. Not to say that like it's traditional shawarma with falafel, but I don't know. I like a good falafel, and this is serviceable. So it's just like reheated in a microwave and then slapped together in lavash. But the sauce they have here too is kind of a little bit different. I read somewhere that people were saying they put nutmeg in it. I'm not really getting any nutmeg, but on the whole, it's different. And just the fact that they have falafel is like, I think, already a big plus. When I first came to Russia back in 2006, I remember on the program, they explained, they were just like, is anybody here a vegetarian? And a few people raised their hands, and they were like, okay, is anybody a vegan? And nobody raised their hand. They said, thank goodness for that. Because like, again, 20 years ago, veganism just didn't exist here in Russia. It was, why would you not eat animal products? With regards to vegetarianism, it was also kind of strange, but the thing is, a lot of Russian food is already just predominantly vegetable based. I know there are a lot of variations of it where you can make it with meat or without meat, but just the fact that you can usually find the meatless variation does make, or did make, being a vegetarian here feasible 20 years ago. Now, in that period of time, more and more people have become vegetarian here. It's still not as common as it is in the West. But again, like I said, just because so much of Russian cuisine is heavily focused on vegetables, it's not like a huge stretch for a Russian person to maybe become a vegetarian. Veganism is a bit more difficult. The love of sour cream is like deep here, but going back to the falafel, it's nice to see like vegetarian options coming for shawarma as well. That's just not, I mean, like falafel is just such a nice, simple thing. I know this has nothing to do with Moscow, but it's nice. It's nice when new foods expand into the Moscow or whatever. That like gives you a different option. But this thing's massive. I'm not gonna sit here and chat the whole time. I'm not gonna tell some story about homeless people. I'm gonna finish this. We're gonna take a look at the church, and then we're gonna go on over that way too. So I'll see you in a second. Okay, so finish the shawarma with falafel. What I will say, overall, pretty solid. I had a good time with it. Yeah, overall. The falafel was a little bit dry. Would have been nice if the sauce would have been, I don't know, somehow spread out a little bit more so that it would have helped with the dryness a little bit, but it's a nitpick. It barely leaked, which is a big thing with shawarma. So yeah, overall, pretty solid. Again, like a 7 out of 10. Not life-changing, but pretty good. Like, I would eat it again. I'll put it like that. So this right here, well, we're gonna come around to it. I think the thing that we maybe want to go see is that bit that's under construction right there. It's kind of all covered up. This is, oh, I got to get the name out of it right here. This is the Храм Рождества Пресвятой Богородицы, which is, if I'm not mistaken, done up in the Narishkin Baroque style, which is, or sometimes known as the Moscow Baroque style. Yeah, it does kind of look like the actual thing that we want to see is all covered up. We'll take a look. No, it is. It is. Okay, so this is pretty much just like a regular unassuming church, right? The typical kind of brick for this period of time. Hope it gets a little bit more quiet in here. But what makes this church a little bit more interesting is that it is the final resting place, if we will. Not exactly, but there is a little chapel here dedicated to a miracle worker. And the miracle worker was originally from the Ryazanskaya Oblast, or I guess it's not the Oblast, but historically the Ryazan area. And she was blind and had a very sort of difficult childhood, obviously, but it was one of those things, like she was beaten to the point where she couldn't walk and just like was left to a bed. And it got to be one of these things where when she would put her hand on somebody's back, it would like miraculously all be fine. And that is it right there, right? So when I always feel like, well, so this is, I think you can hear me. This is the chapel dedicated to Matrona, and I can never remember her last name because it's a very difficult one. Anemyansevskaya. There we go. But she actually was buried in a cemetery originally that was across the way, but when they built this highway through here, they had to remove some of the graves, and she's actually buried in the there's another cemetery on the other side of the botanical garden. She's actually buried over there, but they left this chapel for her, and you can actually see her sort of visage or her image in here. So it's a small thing, it's a simple thing, but kind of one of those little things that makes this area a little bit more unusual. This is this was the Vladikina
Простите,
region.
простите, вы как-то с разрешения это делаете или просто пришли и вот это что?
Просто пришел.
Ну, спрашивают у настоятеля, можно ли это? Что вы сейчас делаете?
Снимаю, объясняю, что это такое.
Вы с телевидения, вы откуда?
Что откуда?
Ну, у вас территория храма. Да?
И-
Здесь есть охрана. Любое действие нужно как-то согласовывать с настоятелем, со священником. Понимаете, да, правила?
А,
Или у вас как бы там есть ну, задания. У нас бывают такие часто, как бы звонят, согласовываем. Я очарована храмом, я согласна с этим, он старинный. Но как-то нужно об этом оповещать.
Мешаю?
Нет, вы не мешаете, но правила есть, понимаете? И мы счастливы, что мира. И все-таки вы мне объясните, что.
И просто не видел правила там, что только можно прийти и снимать или делать что-то с
Можно
согласу.
прийти, вот сейчас видите, пьяный пришел, мы сейчас тревожную кнопку вы вызывали. Вы, возможно, снимаете то, что не надо бы, вот так людей, да?
А что не
Правильно
надо
меня
снимать
интересует?
здесь?
Ну, сложно очень с вами разговаривать, я понимаю. И тем не менее, все съемки через настоятеля.
Ну
Так
да.
можно?
Когда настоятель благословляет, так надо поступать,
То есть
дорогой,
все
потому что
действия на территории храма
мы
делаются
отвечаем
по
за все свои
благословению.
действия, понимаете? А на территории храма вы как дома, понимаете? Это
Я
самое, что
думала,
хотите,
что
то и делайте.
экскурсия
На-
до московского долголетия, поэтому сразу ко мне подошла.
Ну да.
А так вы, нет, мы очень горды своим храмом. у нас
Не
много
потому, что мы вас
святых.
обидели, просто вот это такой порядок. В Покровском монастыре там даже не то, что там невозможно ничего даже нарушить, там такая дисциплина, понимаете, это самое. Я не могу ничего там сделать, это там такое строгое послушание, это самое. А-
Просто это не первый раз я
Да, конечно.
пришел куда-то
Да,
и
конечно,
снимал.
радость моя. Конечно, это такое, потому что, ну, не думайте, что мы вас страшим или что-то там это сам. Просто оно такое, ну, как
Ну,
бы...
я поэтому
Да.
пришел сегодня
Это
днем.
мне не говорю, что вы плохой человек.
по
это
будням,
самое.
ну, я
Просто
поймал,
вот
я
такое,
ничего не
знаете,
делал, да.
Чтобы это самое, настоятель благословляет, все хорошо. Если не благословляет, не надо.
Ну,
Всё.
хорошо.
Простите меня.
Да,
Простите,
все
родная.
хорошо, все хорошо. До свидания. Че?
Сами по себе снимаете?
Да, естественно.
Да ничего страшного.
Ну, я тоже. Вот я, как обычно, когда иду, недавно я был там на Красносельской, там, ой, я не знаю, как монастырь там называется, тоже там пошел, все спокойно. Я просто стараюсь показывать то, что находится в каждом районе. Ну, как-то.
Ну, ничего страшного, я думаю, они тут проявили лишнюю бдительность. К нам иногда заходят всякие
Ну,
личности.
я понимаю, такой район может быть такой.
Да, немножко такой глухой.
Ну, да.
Но храм очень древний, вы знаете его историю?
Ну, так себе. Я знаю, что это здание, они, вот как кирпичное здание, они построили в 19 веке, но до этого где-то 100 лет стоял здесь деревянный примерно, да?
3 деревянных храма, начиная с 1627 года. То есть в следующем году нам будет 400 лет. И у нас иконы здесь, оружейной палаты, которым по 400 лет.
Ну, это
Они
да.
восстановлены. Вы заходили вовнутрь?
Пока нет.
Идемте, я вам быстро покажу.
Может, спасибо.
Я сейчас проводила экскурсию для школьников.
А я видел как раз, как они ушли отсюда, да.
Я захватила с собой фотографии, чтобы показать, доказать, что это
Что это
очень
не-
древние иконы, да.
До свидания. I'm not sure how much of that's actually going to get into the video. It's a lot of translating, but very, very nice woman there. Yelena, I don't know if I'm going to have to do a jump cut or not, but the amount of information that she had with regards to the church, how much she was able to fill me in. And like, I learned stuff just in general about how iconography and all that stuff is done. I don't even know how visible it's going to be on video, just because it is really dark in there, and cameras like this just don't do a very good job of picking it up. But I will try to take as much of that information as I can, and maybe I'll have to do like a separate video on it, but I was not expecting that. And I guess maybe that's the lesson. When you do stuff like this, sometimes you probably should ask. I guess with churches, like I was explaining to them when I got stopped by the two people outside, was that those have always seemed kind of like public spaces. I know that they are territories that belong to the church, but like in the monastery in Okruzhnaya, and then in some of the other places around the city, there's really no problem with that, just because there are more people that come through. But as Yelena was explaining, again, I don't know if this is going to be in this video or a separate video, or I just might have to cut all of it, because this is a more industrial area, sometimes the people that wander onto the territory are not quite sober or just not in the best form. But actually, you know what? I do want to go. She said that there was a little bit of some stuff with regards to how the old monks, like 500 years ago, had built a pond type thing for fish. So we can go down to the river, or the stream Likhabori, and we can take a look at if that's still down there. In general, I do want to go over there and take a look and talk a little bit about sort of new housing complexes and how I think they can actually be really, really good, but it just has to be done in the correct way. But if we go down, we can then come around up that way, and then we're going to cross underneath the highway, and then we're going to go back over that way too. So we'll go back around down here, and I think I don't want to go too far down, because this is also, like, when it comes to drawing that circle, we are on the edge, but it's a fairly large territory for the church. It's also very loud. It's an industrial area. There's really not much can be done about that. But, well, I guess in the future I'll have to be a little bit more proactive with asking if I can do a little bit of filming, which is fair. So, where is the creek? All right, I see a bridge. I see a very heavily, not forested, but lots of plants in this area. So I'm assuming this is the Likhabori stream or river, or however you want to classify it. I don't know if the ancient thing for fish, the old where they would keep the fish, is still there. But I guess we can come down and take a look. Looks just kind of like a regular old river, but that's fair. Okay, so I don't know where the fish thing would have been. Maybe she did a better job of explaining it than I understood while listening to her, but okay, so whatever. We'll go back the way we were going. Just thinking about it a little bit more now, I think maybe I just won't go into churches for the most part in the future, unless there's like some really, really big, important, actual thing there. The little chapel, the miracle worker lady, all of that stuff, I don't know if it's worth the hassle, all things considered. It was interesting. I'm really glad I went in there. I'm really glad that that nice woman was there. But me banking on the fact that there will be such people in the churches or in the monasteries is not a big thing. And then just in general, as a foreigner trying to film something, yeah. So I might just avoid that in the future, which is fair. It is interesting. It is obviously a part of the country's history, but like, if it's going to be such a, I don't want to say a pain in the butt, but if it's going to be one of those things where I have to feel like I'm jumping through 30 hoops to get to it, it's not really worth it, you know. And I get it. It is a house of worship, technically, But again, as I was explaining to them, I figured if I went there in the middle of the afternoon on a work day when there realistically wouldn't be anybody there, wasn't planning on going into the church. I was just going onto the territory. So this is what the woman was. Oh, Ostankina's right here too. That's interesting. Russian state television / propaganda / whatever ridiculous shows are on the first channel are not filmed here, but probably spliced together. The woman was saying how 60 years ago, this used to be like a much greener and nicer area, and then heavy industrialization began, and it kind of looks as though that process is reversing, and that in the near future, I'm gonna step back from the road here, in the near future, what used to be dense industrial, I'm assuming back here too, dense industrial real estate is going to be replaced by this. And with these big houses, I think this is where I need to make a clarification, because I do feel like I come across a lot of times as being against these massive new housing complexes. And they're big. And I'm not gonna lie, I kind of like the way this one looks. It's a little bit more subdued and muted. But I think the big thing to keep in mind is we look at where this is and what is around it. And we can see that this is / was an industrial area for probably the last 50 years. And in these situations, there are two options. In the Krasnoselskaya video, in one of the last ones I did, I showed you the little businesses, the little offices where the aviator, right, where the bar / concert hall was. And I think if you have a former industrial region in a more densely populated older part of the city, then that makes sense. You keep it like that and it becomes more of a creative cluster. But when you're in a place like this, out here on the edge of the city realistically, ripping some of that down, and I'm sure that's what's probably going to happen over there, and building dense urban residential real estate, that feels appropriate. That feels like you're ripping out something which has already fallen into disrepair and actually turning it into something that can be used. Now, obviously you would hope that the quality of these buildings would be high and that they would stand the test of time and that in 30 years they're not going to look like complete garbage. We'll find out in the future. But I know there are a lot of people who would probably think that I just complain I don't like new buildings in Moscow, but I think it has to be done correctly. Again, over in that region on the other side of the railroad tracks and all of that, where you had those old brick buildings from the 1950s and 60s, it feels a little out of place. Here, where you literally have the massive Soviet cement walls with the barbed wire at the top, it feels a little bit more appropriate. Like, that's disgusting, that's horrible, nobody wants to look at that. This, on the other hand, feels a lot better. So, it's not anything exciting. People live here, but it's fine. It's better than the alternative, right? And I think the other thing too, right, is that a lot of these housing complexes are where you do get local businesses that are only in this specific area. I don't know, for example, but I'm assuming that aside from the Yandex Market and stuff, I'm assuming that a few small businesses are probably going to be opened here from the people that live here. And it's, I don't know, it's something. I guess the question is for everybody watching, like, would you want to live in a building like this if you had everything you need down on the first floor and you could just pop out, grab a coffee, go get your Amazon, your Yandex, whatever delivery. There are restaurants in the other buildings I know I've seen on the map, and you get your haircut here. You wouldn't have to go anywhere. You'd have to go maybe to work, and then in the evenings, everything, you would just come straight home and everything would be right here. I don't know. I I personally like things spread out a little bit more, but I also understand why some people prefer it like this. But anyway, we are done on this side of the tracks. We're actually going to go back over that way, but I think I'm not going to subject you to me crossing under the bridge right there, under the railway bridge. So I'll see you on the other side. And I'm going to cut it right there, but I do want to ask all of you watching a question, and that is, I'm still up in the air about this whole idea of filming in churches or even just around churches and monasteries in the future. Russian law does define that type of territory where you can easily walk in without any sort of barriers or anything of that nature. Just if you're able to walk onto the territory, that is technically public or open space, and you are allowed to film there. The problem is Russian law is always a bit vague, and precedent and courts and things like that, it's kind of a foreign concept, it feels like at times. Nevertheless, technically, I was within my legal rights to film there. I do understand the argument that was made that I probably should ask the people who live there, and that would also make sense had I planned on going into the church to film, but as it was, that was not my plan in the first place. I literally just wanted to go and show you the small chapel dedicated to Matrona Moskovskaya while in that area and talk a little bit about her. Although, unfortunately, I did kind of get thrown off by that whole interaction. It is kind of funny. It's the second metro stop, and at both metro stops, I have had these unplanned and sort of very different types of conversations with people. Now, I will say that the woman who was a guide and who took me into the church, Yelena, she was an absolute delight. She was very knowledgeable. And I do think, and I would like to also hear from you as well, I do think that I maybe will take the footage, which I did not put into this video, and make its own, make a separate video with that footage. It's probably about 10 to 15 minutes, and I would say that when I was filming, I wasn't really pointing the camera all over the place. I was just kind of holding it close to my chest and turning this way and that. But if you would like to get a look inside the church, and it's going to take a little bit of time because it's a lot of translating and doing the subtitles, but if you would like to see that information or hear that information from Yelena about the history of that church and the icons in it, then please let me know in the comments, and that is something that I can work on in the background as well while I'm doing these videos, and then I'll put that out at some time in the future if people want to see that. I've looked at the video quality. It's okay. It's not great. Again, these types of cameras, action cameras that is, they don't do the best in low lighting situations, but it's okay. It's okay for the most part. I mean, churches are kind of dark. That's just how it is. Yeah, so anyway, also let me know if you would like me to still go to monasteries and churches and try to do that. I mean, obviously, like I said, I will in the future ask a little bit, but again, just to walk onto a territory and film is not out of the question. It's the, I don't know, the Russian Karen or whatever you want to call it, who determined that I shouldn't be there filming things. Again, Yelena, the guide, she mentioned that she thought the other woman was overreacting. I have to probably guess it's because I was speaking English. I don't know why else you would bother. It's pretty clear that I wasn't doing anything. But anyway, just one of those fun interactions as always. In fact, I guess not long ago when I did a review of what had been happening in the headlines here in, I believe, March and April, I was filming in front of a circus building and I got asked by security to leave. So there are all sorts of people who just do not understand the law in Russia, which is maybe not a huge surprise because I feel like in a lot of countries, plenty of people don't understand the law, both citizens and people who are supposed to uphold the law. So why would Russia be any different, right? But yeah, anyway, let me know if you want me to continue filming in such areas and showing bits and pieces of that. I'm open to whatever, and as it is with Moscow, there are a lot of historic churches in various parts of the city. Not all parts of the city, but in a lot of them, nevertheless. And yeah, and then for those who are interested in seeing inside the church and getting a little bit of that experience as well too, just let me know in the comments. I would be willing to put that out there. As it is, there is one last video for metro station Okruzhnaya, and it's actually going to be the shortest one of all of the Metro Roulette of all the Metro Roulette videos thus far. So I think, not entirely sure, but it's going to be like maybe even under the 15-minute mark. So there's not too much left to explore, but I do want to show a little bit more. And yeah, so I guess keep your eyes open for that in the near future as well. But I'll be looking forward to reading everybody's comments and what they have to say. And leave a like, all that fun stuff. I will see you in the very near future. But until then, take care of yourselves. This has been Russia in Context. Thanks for watching.